jadi aku yang untuk dari Indonesia juga.
Good
morning, Your Holiness. Bhagavati Prasna Paramita Dindaya Sutra. Sutra hati penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan. Penuh hormat saya sembah Sang Triratna. Demikian telah saya dengar, suatu saat Sang Buddha sedang berada di Raja Griha, di Gunung Puncak Nasar, bersama dengan serombongan besar biksu-biksu dan bodhisattva-bodhisattva. Pada saat itu, perhatian Sang Buddha sedang terpusat pada konsentrasi yang menyelidiki semua fenomena dalam jumlah tak terbatas, yang disebut pencerahan yang mendalam. Pada saat itu juga, Yang Mulia Bhagawan Avalokiteswara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, sedang mengamati secara seksama praktek penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan yang mendalam, serta mengamati secara sempurna kosongnya kelima skandal dari keberadaan yang sejati. Kemudian, berkat inspirasi dari Sang Buddha, Yang terhormat Sariputra berkata kepada Yang Mulia Bhagawan Avalokiteswara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, bagaimana seharusnya seorang putra dari silsilah baik berlatih bila ia ingin menjalankan praktek penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan yang mendalam. Lalu Yang Mulia Bhagawan Avalokiteswara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva menjawab, Sariputra, siapapun putra atau putri dari silsilah baik yang ingin menjalankan praktek penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan yang mendalam, seharusnya mengamati secara sempurna demikian. Lihatlah secara sempurna dan tepat kosongnya kelima skanda dari keberadaan yang sejati. Bentuk adalah kesenyataan. Kesenyataan adalah bentuk. Kesenyataan tidak lain dari bentuk. Dan bentuk tidak lain dari kesenyataan. Demikian pula halnya perasaan. Kemampuan membeda-bedakan faktor-faktor pembentuk dan kesadaran adalah sunya. Sariputra, demikianlah semua fenomena sunya, tanpa diri, tidak diproduksi, dan tidak berakhir, tidak bernoda, dan tidak dibersihkan dari noda, tidak berkurang, dan tidak bertambah. Oleh karena itu, Sariputra, di dalam kesunyataan tiada bentuk, tiada perasaan, tiada kemampuan membeda-bedakan, tiada faktor-faktor pembentuk, tiada kesadaran, tiada mata, tiada hidung, tiada telinga, tiada lidah, tiada tubuh, tiada batin, tiada rupa, tiada suara, tiada bau, tiada rasa, tiada yang disentuh, tiada fenomena, tiada unsur mata dan sebagainya, hingga tiada unsur batin, dan juga tiada unsur kesadaran mental. Tiada ketidaktahuan, dan tiada berakhirnya ketidaktahuan dan sebagainya, hingga tiada proses penuaan serta kematian, dan tiada berakhirnya proses penuaan serta kematian. Begitu pula tiada duka, tiada penyebab duka, tiada akhir duka, maupun jalan benar, tiada kebijaksanaan yang arya, tiada pencapaian maupun bukan pencapaian. Maka Sariputra, karena tiada pencapaian, para bodhisattva mengandalkan dan memusatkan diri dalam penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan, dan dalam hati mereka tiada gangguan maupun ketakutan. Dengan mengatasi pandangan-pandangan yang sesat, mereka mencapai keadaan tanpa duka. Semua Buddha dari ketiga kurun waktu, dengan mengandalkan penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan, telah mewujudkan keadaan yang tidak terlampaui, pencerahan yang sempurna dan lengkap, Oleh karena itu, mantra penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan adalah mantra pengetahuan agung, mantra yang tak tertandingi, mantra yang tiada taranya, mantra yang sepenuhnya menerangkan semua derita secara tuntas. Karena mantra tersebut tidak palsu, ia dikenal sebagai kebenaran. Mantra penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan dikumandangkan. Tayata, gate, para samgate, bodhisattva. Sariputra, demikianlah seorang bodhisattva mahasatwa harusnya berarti dalam penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan yang mendalam. Kemudian Sang Buddha bangkit dari konsentrasinya dan memuji yang mulia Bhagawan Avalokiteswara, Bodhisattva Mahasatwa, sambil bersabda, penjelasan yang baik, oh putra silsilah. Memang demikian putra silsilah. Demikianlah seharusnya penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan yang mendalam dipraktekkan. Dan kata-kata akan diucapkan. Ketika Sang Buddha bersabda demikian, maka yang mulia Bhagawan Avalokiteswara, Bodhisattva Mahasatwa, dan seluruh perkumpulan para siswa maupun para makhluk duniawi, para dewa, manusia, asura, dan gandharwa bergembira dan memuji sabda Sang Buddha. Demikian sutra mulia hati penyempurnaan kebijaksanaan telah selesai.
독주체.
Thank you.
다들이 엔다.
So today
샤니모 수부티.
is the third day of our teaching.
안다 람즈 슈데
So, after teaching the three principal aspects of the path, I would like to also give do a ceremony for bodhicitta. So, whether you have some representations of the objects of refuge, if you have that, it would be ideal. But if you don't have, you may imagine the Buddha surrounded by bodhisattvas and so forth, the objects of refuge. So here, mainly the Indonesians. Are the main disciples today. So in Indonesia, there are many followers of Muhammad, Islam. And historically, Borobudur indicates that Buddhism had spread in Indonesia very widely. And so, as I usually say, philosophically, there are, of course, differences in the religions. So even within the Nalanda tradition itself, so there are four philosophical schools. So there are various types of religious traditions in the world. Some do assert create a God and others don't. And so despite these differences, but all these religious traditions have the same practice. Whether they are Christians or Muslims, Muslim practitioners, they have the same practice of love. So this is common to all. So with regard to the practice of bodhicitta, of love, and then there is also in these religions the practice of tolerance.
아니 이슈
and contentment. When I was in a Christian monastery in Italy, once
두주 초시
the monks
두주도
were living a very contented life.
차오열의 상마들
So I reflected that the Tibetan monks are living a more kind of a luxurious life compared to them.
아니
So the practice of contentment and tolerance, love and compassion, and doing your best to serve others, to benefit others. All the religions teach that, and there are many people who do practice these.
미리야 거고요 되지 차대샤
So love and compassion is something necessary for human beings these days. And so all religions teach about serving humanity and benefiting them, helping them. And therefore, in today's world, remaining very selfish at such a time when the messages in the religious traditions are very important or helpful. And so the practice of tolerance and patience, contentment, and particularly love and compassion, which are shared amongst the religious traditions. So therefore, I do respect all religions. So for the last 1,000 years, or 2,000 years and so forth, I mean, the religions have been there. And if we say we need only one religion in the world, that's not possible. It's impossible to have all humanity follow one religion. So within the followers of the Buddha, because of their mental difference in mental dispositions, the disciples of the disciples, accordingly, the Buddha gave different teachings. But the essence is to be moral and to have a good heart. So the aim of Buddhism is to reach liberation and omniscient state. Whereas according to the theistic religious traditions, when the practitioners do follow their teaching, what they say is they will be in communion with their God. So there are these different ways of teaching, but the essence of all these religions is the message of love, compassion, and to be a good person. So, historically, for the last over 1,000 years, because of your cultural tradition and your habit with regard to your cultural tradition, so the essence is to practice love and compassion, and therefore it's better to follow your own traditional religion because of your historical connection with it. And but today, economically, because of economic development and prosperity, people are able to travel around the world from one country to the others. And so at such a time when we have this kind of interaction globally, therefore it is very important to be harmonious amongst the people of the different religions, because they teach, the religions teach love, compassion, and so forth. So regarding myself, I have very good friends amongst the Christians. For example, Mother Teresa, who has established her Sisters of Charity centers in Kolkata. And so there are others who also, Christians and other religious traditions, who are sincerely serving people. So today, when there is a lot of interaction amongst the religious traditions, it's very important to have harmony amongst religious traditions, and it's very unfortunate that we, in the name of religion, people fight and kill each other. This is very unfortunate. It's like turning a medicine into a poison. So you, the Indonesian Dharma brothers and sisters, I wish to give this special message to you. You have a special responsibility to have to reach out to the Muslim community, and so that you can build friendship and harmony amongst the Muslims and the Buddhists. So whereas in the other religious traditions, they only believe in one single God, whereas in Buddhism we have the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. So will the Buddha alone save us? That's the answer is no. What the Buddha can do is to teach us the path to liberation and enlightenment. So he is the teacher of the practice of refuge. So the actual refuge is the jewel of Dharma, which is to say that we develop the experience of the teaching within ourselves. In this way, we save ourselves. And the Sangha, the Sangha community is the example to us to journey along the path to enlightenment and liberation. It's like like looking at taking the example of the past masters of India, the masters who will learn it, as well as accomplished and experienced practitioners. So there have been so many of them in the past, and following the teaching of the Buddha itself, the path that the Buddha had shown us, that they have been able to tread along that path by studying and practicing the Dharma. For example, for me, Master Nagarjuna is a very good example of a Sangha. So if you read the Master Nagarjuna's text, you'll see the significance of his teachings. And so we should infer the quality or the reliability of the Buddha through his teaching. And so the Sangha becomes our examples, to whom they become our role models. So just as they have practiced, you should determine that you will also practice to the best of your ability. So day by day, if you could continue with your practice, days built up into weeks, weeks into months, and then months into years. And this way you will be able to make some progress. So of course, you may not be able to build an experience in a day, But if you work for days on, then you'll see some change in a month's time. And then when you look back after several months or several years, then you'll be able to see that you have made some progress if you have made it. And so through your practice, you'll be able to see from your own experience how you can make changes within yourself. And so first we have the role models, which are the Sangha jewel, and then you should determine to follow their example. And as a follower of the teaching of the Buddha, you should make the determination that you will follow the path just as the Buddha has taught and as these Sangha members have followed accordingly. So the actual Dharma jewel is the Dharma jewel. The actual refuge is the Dharma jewel. And so these teachings that we are going to through actually go through this practice of these the teaching itself. So through your practice, what you should do is to build up the antidotes to the negative states of mind, antidotes to these mental afflictions. So in this connection, the Buddhism teaches lots about the workings of mind and emotions. The Buddha himself has said the sages do not wash away the sins of beings, nor do they remove their suffering with their hands. So the Buddha cannot remove our suffering with his hands, and nor will he wash away our sins or unwholesome actions. If that is the case, then how does the Buddha help us? He helps us by showing giving us the teaching which he has himself practiced and experienced, and accordingly having gone through the five-tiered path of accumulation, and then path of preparation, and then the path of seeing, where you when you become a bodhisattva, you reach the first ground of a bodhisattva, and then you tread along the rest of the bodhisattva grounds, and during that bodhisattva grounds, level of the bodhisattva grounds, first you reach the path of seeing, where you do away with the acquired those binding factors of the path of seeing, and then you go through the rest of the grounds, and when you reach this seventh ground, you do away with all the negative emotions, the afflictive emotions or mental afflictions, and then from the eighth ground on, you do away with the obscuration to knowledge. And so we should go along the path which is referred by this mantra of the Heart Sutra, which says go beyond, go perfectly beyond, and then lay the foundation or be established in the Bodhi. And so, with regard to the teaching of emptiness also, you need first to develop the understanding based on listening to the teaching or studying the teaching, and then understanding based on reflection, and then meditate and build your experience. And so, regarding the teaching itself, it's not different from what Master Arjuna and others have met with and experienced. So these great masters of the past, of Tibet and India, became realized masters and learned masters through their study and practice of the teaching, and thereby they're building their experience of the Dharma. And so we also need to do the same by following the teaching, studying it well, and then integrating it within ourselves. Regarding myself, I am an old Buddhist monk. So on a daily basis, as soon as I wake up, I reflect on bodhicitta, and then the view of emptiness. And then in conjunction with these two principles, I do the deity yoga practices on a daily basis. And so these two principles becomes the foundation for my practice every day. I don't know if I make a progress on a daily basis or not, but I see that I have made progress in a year's time. So it's been 60 years or so since I seriously meditated on emptiness, reflected and thought about meditation on emptiness. And then, since 1967, when I first received the teaching on Bodhisattva Charyavatara, it's been about 50 years that I have thought about bodhicitta. And so I can say that we can actually see changes within our mind, transformation within our mind on within a year's period of time. And so whatever negative circumstances I may face, that can be transformed into positive opportunities for me. So through one's sincere dedication in practice, one can do that. Otherwise, people may be wearing the Dharma robes, but they are just images or the facade of a Dharma practitioner, not real. So, what we should do is look at the community of Sangha or the Sangha jewel as our role models. So as I said, I am about 86 years old now. So this old monk, there's no reason why I should deceive you. So I'm sharing my own experience with you. So you may not have any... You may also see that this old monk, the Dalai Lama, has developed his experiences working on the Dharma for so many years. And so, whether I have just said is true or not, you should do your own analysis and investigation. If you find something that I've said is not true with regard to the Dharma practices, then you can sue me in a legal court for telling you lies. So we should do the practice of the Dharma by ourselves, not just saying I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So the Buddha first began his teaching by teaching on the Four Noble Truths, the 37 aids to enlightenment, such as the four mindfulness, establishment of mindfulness, and the four miraculous feet, and so forth. So these are common to both the Pali and Sanskrit traditions. So these common teachings of the Pali and Sanskrit traditions teach the Four Noble Truths, whereas regarding the true cessation and true path, the Sanskrit tradition can be actually uses reason to demonstrate their truth. So, of course, I know many Theravada practitioners. So their practice of Vinaya is extraordinary. So some of them come to my teachings, and I jokingly tell them that the Pali tradition, regarding the Pali tradition, they don't use much logic and reasoning to demonstrate the truth of the teaching of the Buddha. So I tell them that the Pali tradition, followers of the Pali tradition, are like an old man without teeth. So if they've come across a very tough point in the teaching, they cannot chew on it. They're like old men without teeth. Whereas in the Sanskrit tradition, because of using logic and reasoning, we even go to the extent of saying that certain teachings of the Buddha, when they are put to the test of reasoning, they don't actually stand to that test, and therefore they are interpreted and not taken literally. And so the Pali tradition is like like having no teeth and not being able to chew a hard, difficult point in the teaching, whereas the Sanskrit tradition is like having teeth to chew these difficult points. So the Nalanda tradition, or the Sanskrit tradition, we follow. So regarding myself, who is explaining the teaching to you, I follow Master Chandarakshita's tradition, who came to Tibet in the 8th century, and he wrote Tattva Samgraha, this compendium of reality, a text on epistemology and logic. And so he introduced this Nalanda, the vast and the profound Nalanda tradition to us Tibetans. And for the last over 1,000 years, through the process of study, reflection, and meditation, we have preserved it very well, very successfully. We have preserved it, and so regarding myself, I may not claim to be a top scholar as such, but I can still say that I am part of the upholders of the Dharma, somewhere in the crowd there. So this tradition that we have with it, we can actually. So in the past, of course, we didn't have the study of science or modern science as such. But during my lifetime, of course, we have access to modern science, and so through this Nalanda tradition, philosophical view, the logic, and the science as found in the literature, with these we have been able to have discussions with modern scientists So through these dialogues and discussions, I have found them to be helpful to me. For example, regarding quantum physics, for example, when I reflect on the philosophical view of the middle way, I actually use some of the concepts of quantum physics. So, of course, modern science developed and spread from the West, whereas they don't have much understanding of the deeper workings of the mind and emotions, and so they do take interest and pay attention to the that of psychology and the study of mind and emotions that we find in our literature. And so there is mutual benefit. They learn about psychology from us, and we learn about the matter and these quantum physics and so forth. So today there is lots of talk about the peace in the world peace, but this cannot be bought in the supermarkets, in the malls and markets. What we need to know is what actually disturbs our peace of mind, what disturbs our mind, and therefore, and through that, we need to also find what are those factors which can counter those negative emotions and so forth. And so, regarding these, there is so much information in the tradition that we follow, the Nalanda tradition, and therefore, we can actually today go hand in hand with the shoulder to shoulder with these modern scientists, so that there is mutual learning between this modern science and our Nalanda tradition. So I also consider this to be one of my commitments. Sorry. So from our tradition, we know that we can actually contribute to modern science. So please keep this in mind. So I usually talk about the physical health and mental or emotional health or hygiene. So with regard to the former, the physical hygiene, of course, the modern science has contributed so much, and it's still developing further. Whereas with regard to emotional hygiene, modern science, does not have that much knowledge and insight. And therefore, we to preserve a peace of mind and so forth. Today, the modern scientists are considering this important. It's important to have love and compassion. So in the past, modern science did not pay much attention to the subjective inner world of mind or consciousnis, whereas today there are some scientists who do recognize that there's something which actually impacts our brain. Apart from the physical brain, there is something that impacts our brain. And so there are cases of people staying in meditative states even after clinical death, which is called Thokme. So after the heartbeat stops, the flow of blood stops, and therefore the brain death happens. Even after brain death, there are people who sit in these meditative states. And so this is some fact that's happening, and therefore in Buddhism we can explain it through the explanation based on nerve systems or channels and wind energies and so forth. And so amongst the scientists, there are those who do take interest, there's a growing new interest in learning about how these the wind energies and so forth work. So, of course, in order to be able to do this research, you need to have some knowledge about this tradition of the Nalanda tradition is the best for that. Of course, Pali tradition is very good. And then in China, they do follow the Sanskrit tradition, but they focus more on meditation and do not pay attention to the study of the great classical texts, and particularly texts on logic and epistemology, such as the Master Dharmakirti's texts, the Brahmanavartika and so forth. And in Tibetan, we have all these texts on logic translated in our language, and there are many Geshes, scholars, who actually have memorized many of these texts, and not only memorizing these poems, but also the versified text, but also their commentaries are being studied by these scholars. And regarding myself, I did memorize some parts of the Pramanavartika, and I haven't memorized that of the Pramana Samuchaya. I did also memorize Abhidharma Kosha Karika, but I have not found much use of it after coming to exile. As Master Chandrakirti says, this suchness just explained is most profound and terrifying, yet people with past habituation will certainly realize it. Others, however, despite vast learning, will fail to comprehend. Verse 55 of that last chapter, the second last verse of the text. And so Master Chandrakirti says that masters like Vasubandhu and so forth, if you ask if they have actually rejected this profound teaching, he said yes. And so the tradition of memorizing the root text and then studying the commentary, word for word commentary, and then using logic to demonstrate or to establish their truth, and by using the logical texts is something incredible that we have preserved in Tibet. So for the last over 1,000 years, we have done that very sincerely. And so the qualified Geshes and Lamas have the responsibility, it's their responsibility to share what they have learned in our tradition with their students and friends. So the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, we stopped. Or the verse number 37, which says to dedicate the merit thus accumulated through these efforts to enlightenment with the wisdom free of concepts and so forth. So this is the dedication verse, to dedicate the merit thus accumulated through these efforts to enlightenment with wisdom free of concepts of the three spheres, in order to eliminate suffering of all infinite beings, is the practice of a bodhisattva. Next verse. By relying on the words of the genuine masters, I explained the meanings taught in the sutras, tantras, and other treatises in the form of these 37 bodhisattva practices to benefit those who wish to train on the bodhisattva's path. Because my intelligence is small and my studies few, I lack linguistic skills to please the scholars. Yet, since they are based on sutras and the teachings of the genuine masters, I believe these practices of the bodhisattvas are flawless. Nevertheless, since the vastness of the bodhisattva's conduct is difficult to fathom by someone like me with an inferior intellect, I pray to the genuine masters to consider this with patience all my flaws, such as contradictions, incoherence, and so on, by virtue of the merit gathered here, and so forth. And then the colophon, which says this was written for his own and others' benefit by the monk Thokme as an exponent of scripture and reasoning in the precious cave of Ngulchu. So next we move on to verse number 5. As you habituate in this way, the three principal aspects of the path, as you habituate in this way, and when you even for an instant of when not even an instant of admiration arises for the prosperities of cyclic existence. So with regard to this line, I mean, we cannot, although people may have striven for many generations and to accumulate wealth, what use are they in the end? And then instead of helping, sometimes they even turn into weapons for harming oneself and others. And so, and when the thought aspiring for liberation arises day and night, at this point the true renunciation has arisen. And so that is the measure of having developed the renunciation. And then the verse number 6. So having developed the thought, determination to be free from samsara, and then having developed the single-pointed concentration and insight into selflessness and so forth, if these experiences are not complemented and supported by bodhicitta, these insights and experiences will not become antidotes to the obscuration to knowledge. So there is no way you can reach the state of omniscience. So such renunciation too, if it is not sustained by pure awakening mind, it will not become a cause of the perfect bliss of unexalted enlightenment. Therefore, O intelligent ones, generate the excellent awakening mind. And then verse number 7, read. So by reflecting, verse number 8, by reflecting on all your mothers who suffer such conditions, please generate the supreme awakening mind. And so this, yesterday I explained it in relation to the renunciation, saying by reflecting on such a condition of myself, in such a condition, may I generate the thought of renunciation. And so it's a very powerful way to meditate on renunciation by switching in this way. Verse number 9, if you do not have the wisdom realizing the ultimate nature, even if you gain familiarity with the renunciation and awakening mind, you will not be able to cut the root of samsaric existence. So strive in the means of realizing dependent origination. So instead of saying strive in the means of realizing emptiness or selflessness, he emphasizes the dependent origination here. So because through this reasoning of dependent origination, you'll be able to gain insight into emptiness. And Master Nagarjuna also says, what is dependently originated is said to be empty, that is said to be designated, and that is the middle way. Since there is nothing, no phenomena which is not dependent, therefore there is no phenomena which is not empty. And so, Master Tsongkhapa himself also gained insight into the emptiness based on certain verses which says, if the aggregates were the self, and so forth. So that is to say that he gained insight into the emptiness through the understanding of dependent origination. And then verse number 10. So when we talk about this profound emptiness, we are actually referring to a state, a being, the way of being of things, which is free from both the extremes of eternalism and nihilism. And so the more you think about it, the more you will gain certainty about it. So when you understand emptiness, the meaning of emptiness is dependent origination and vice versa, then you'll be able to do away with both the extremes of nihilism and or permanence and nihilism. Otherwise, if you just say that things do not exist the way they appear, it may sometimes hamper your practice of the method side. So it's necessary to develop this understanding that of the meaning of emptiness. Dependent origination is emptiness, emptiness is dependent origination. So the reasoning of the lack of one and many, which is taught in the beginning of the study of Prajnaparamita, or study of the Abhisamaya Alankara together with the sutras, which says that things, whatever there is, there cannot be anything which is without any parts. So when you have a whole, you can divide it into parts, and then when you further divide the parts into their constituents, you will be able to find nothing. And so finally the matters are broken down into the atomic particles, subatomic particles, and so forth. So verse number 10, with respect, so verse number 10 says, when with respect to the whole phenomena of samsara nirvana, you see that cause and effect never deceive their laws. So what you can see, understand is that so whatever thing you come across, what they appear to is as if they have some objective independent existence. So though there is such an appearance, if you were to delve or search for their identity within themselves, you cannot find anything as there being that object. And therefore, the understanding of dependently designated nature of things is, to understand that is very important. When you have that understanding that things are dependently related and originated, and when you have dismantled the focus of objectification, at that point you have entered the path that pleases the Buddhas. So the more you the more you gain conviction in the law of causality, that things come across through dependence on other factors, and there's nothing else than the way they could exist. And then when you have dismantled the focus of objectification, at that point you have entered the path that pleases the Buddhas. And therefore it's very important to differentiate between the philosophical assertions of the Savatantrika Madhyamakas and the Prasangika Madhyamakas. Because the Savatantrika Madhyamakas still do hold on to some objectivity in things. So the Savatantrika Madhyamakas do divide phenomena into the false and the true conventions. So they talk about, although things do appear to be the same, but there is difference between these false and the correct conventional things. So the Savatantrika Madhyamakas do say that things do exist the way they appear to us. So if you ask, how do something appear to you? For example, when you look at me, you see me, you see Dalai Lama. What actually happens is the Dalai Lama appears to be solidly, concretely existing from his own side to you. So he appears to be objectively existing. Whereas if you actually analyze me through the sevenfold reasoning or the fivefold reasoning, you will not be able to actually find anything that you can pinpoint as me, the Dalai Lama. Of course, there is somebody here, because I can talk about my body, my speech, but where is that I? So, I'm neither one with the aggregates. I'm neither one with the aggregates nor separate or distinct from it. I do not possess the aggregates, nor do the aggregates possess me. I'm not dependent on the aggregates independently, nor the aggregates on me. And I don't possess the aggregates. Who am I? Instead of Tathagata, which is used in the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, you can actually analyze in this way yourself. So when you actually find nothing that you can pinpoint as being this person or anything, unless you are able to, what you actually come across is that you may deny the existence of things if you are not able to posit that the I do exist conventionally merely through the force of designation. So when you are able to posit things to be existing merely by way of convention, you will not have that kind of logical inconsistency. So the things appearing to you as if they have some objective existence, that appearance of objective existence is what we refer to as the object to be negated when you want to prove things to be empty of inherent existence. And so Master Chandrakirti says, apart from being designated, things cannot be said to have any way of existence. So The Savatantrika Madhyamakas, the difference between Savatantrika Madhyamakas and Prasangikas is that the Savatantrikas say things do exist objectively, the way they appear to our sensory perceptions, whereas the Prasangikas say that denies that or rejects that things exist the way they appear to our sensory perceptions. So this differentiation must be made clearly. So verse number 10 read, and when you have dismantled the focus of objectification, at that point you have entered the path that pleases the Buddha. So when you gain certitude in the fact that things are merely designated, then you'll be able to say that though things do not exist the way they appear to us, yet they do exist in that way. Verse number 11, so long as the two understandings of appearance, which is undeceiving, dependent origination, and emptiness, devoid of all thesis, remain separate, so long you have not realized the intent of the sage. So, with the appearance, through the understanding of appearance, you do away with So when you are able to confirm that things are convinced, when you are able to feel convinced that things are merely designated, however, so long as the two understandings appear separate, so long you realize intent. And however, at some point, when without alternation, but at once, the instance you see that dependent origination undeceiving, if the entire object of grasping at certitude is dismantled, at that point your analysis of view has culminated. And so when you see the appearances, you do away with the extreme of permanence, and when you see things to be empty, you do away with the nihilism. So things do exist through dependence on each other. So since being dependent and being independent are mutually exclusive, if you cannot, since things are dependently originated, therefore they cannot be they cannot be objective or independently existent. So furthermore, when appearance dispels the extreme of existence, and when the emptiness dispels the extreme of non-existence, and so forth. And so, in the final verse, it says, O son, seek solitude, and by enhancing the power of perseverance, by strengthening your diligence, you swiftly accomplish your ultimate aspiration. So, Rinpoche calls his disciple, Tsongkhapa Banghawan Thakpa, as his son. So with this, we have completed the teaching on the three principal aspects of the path. So this is a very short text, and so it's easy to memorize. So whenever you have spare time, if you could reflect on it, use this text, it would be very good. So otherwise, if you have to do a lot of prayers, you may fall asleep sometimes, but using this text, it would be very good for your meditation. And if you have difficulty sleeping at night, you may reflect on these the three principal aspects of the path using this text, and you may be able to fall asleep better. And because of your thoughts, which the virtuous thought that you have familiarized before going to sleep, the sleep itself would be turned into virtuous state of mind, because sleep is said to be a variable mental factor. And so sleep, regret, and then the two other mental factors called analysis and investigation, all four are variable mental factors. So this teaching was given very privately to Thokme by Master Tsongkhapa. So in Indonesian language, if you have this text, if you don't have it in your language, you may translate it. It would be good to do so. And not only that, but memorize the text. So with regard to this person who taught you this text now, I received the teaching since my very early age, from Tata Rinpoche, and then Ling Rinpoche, and Trijang Rinpoche also. When he became my junior tutor, he gave this teaching to me. And so I have received this teaching on this text from these three great masters. And regarding the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, I received it from Kuno Lama Rinpoche, Tenzin Gyalsey. So, as an auspicious conclusion to this discourse this time, I thought of doing the Bodhicitta ceremony. So, the three principal aspects of the path emphasizes the practice of bodhicitta. So in order to get rid of and overcome or eliminate the cognitive obscurations, the mere insight into emptiness is not sufficient. You need to have the bodhicitta. So I reflect on bodhicitta on a daily basis. So when I do daily yoga practices, I actually do say these the verses of taking refuge and bodhicitta, the verses for bodhicitta and the bodhisattva vows. And then when at the end of the daily yoga practice, doing that, I do this daily yoga practice, doing meditation on emptiness. So sometimes you wonder, what happened when you meditate on emptiness? Where am I? And in the text on bodhicitta, it says, so in the interest of myself and others, may I generate this awakening mind. So the text says, I seek refuge in the three jewels I confess each and every wrongdoing. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart the state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of the highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests and so forth. So, if you know these lines, you may repeat them after me. If you don't have this text in your language, you may translate it. And so the text begins by taking refuge in the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And next one line is confession, confessing your wrongdoings. So I confess each and every wrongdoing is a confession. So with your three doors of body, speech, and mind, whatever sinful actions you may have created, and particularly through selfish, self-cherishing attitude. So all the problems and difficulties we face are the results of our self-cherishing attitude. And so this is the ruinous factor for our happiness. And then next is, I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. So virtuous practices of body, speech, and mind, and particularly a good heart, altruistic state of mind, with which you help sentient beings, human beings as well as animals and so forth. And then you say, I take to heart the state of Buddhahood. So the state of Buddhahood, so Buddha's enlightenment, so here the Buddhahood or enlightenment refers to both the profound and the extensive aspects of the path. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. So in order to accomplish your own goal, there's no greater factor than bodhicitta to do that, and in a powerful way. With this, you have a very good health, physical health, and a peaceful, happy state of mind for yourself and others. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. So as Bodhisattva Charyavatara says at the end of the 3rd chapter, today, in the presence of all protectors, I invite transmigrators as my guests to Sugadhahood, and in the meantime, to temporal happiness. God, demigods, and others rejoice. And so, in our daily yoga practices, sometimes we do practices to shoo away evil beings, so-called evil beings. There's none to be actually driven away as such. And so, having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful, supreme, enlightened practices. So these practices are beneficial in the short term as well as long term. There is long term, short term as well as long term benefit for yourself and others. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So you may not repeat after me. So I will recite these lines, and while I do so, reflect as I have explained to you. So before that, imagine Buddha, visualize the Buddha in front of you, surrounded by these 8 close disciples, such as Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, Maitreya, Kitigarbha, and so forth. And then, in turn, those of the great Indian masters like Nagarjuna and the Tibetan masters and so forth. So that's the 4 line for the 7 limb practice. Whatever merit or virtues I have collected through my prostration, confession, offering, rejoicing, requesting the Buddhas not to pass away and to turn the wheel of Dharma, I dedicate it for the supreme enlightenment. And so as I say these lines, please generate bodhicitta within yourself. Even if you may not repeat after me. I seek refuge in the 3 jewels. I confess each and every wrongdoing. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart the state of Buddhahood and enlightenment. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly in order to fulfill the aims of myself, and that I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite on sentient beings of my guests. I shall enact the delightful, supreme, and enlightening practices. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I seek refuge in the 3 jewels. I confess each and every wrongdoing. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart the Buddha's enlightenment. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of highest awakening, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful, supreme enlightening practices. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. At the end of this 3rd repetition, please feel determined that you develop the altruistic spirit of enlightenment. So you may also make the pledge that you will never cause decline to this bodhicitta. I seek refuge in the 3 jewels. I confess each and every wrongdoing. I rejoice in the virtues of beings. I take to heart the Buddha's enlightenment. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly in order to fulfill the aims of myself, and I should develop the spirit of awakening. Having developed the spirit of highest awakening, I should invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful, supreme, enlightened practices. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So these are lines from the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. So today I have been born as a human being and so forth. And these are the verses from Bodhisattva Charya Avatara.
Oh, yeah.
So this concludes the this teaching this time with this auspicious practice of bodhicitta. And so this is the essence of the teaching of the Buddha. So the Tibetan masters of the past and have also made the bodhicitta their principal practice and the view of emptiness. So His Holiness recited these lines from Bodhisattva Charya, the 3rd chapter, which follows the taking the Bodhisattva vows.
Question.
So let's start with the questions now.
Your Holiness, good morning. Thank you for the precious teaching and also bring us through generating bodhicitta. So we have 5 countries of questioners for us today. So I would like to bring our attention to the first questioner. She's from Singapore. She's an American who has been staying in Singapore for the past 30 years. Her name is Cindy Payne.
Rinpoche La, Shokbadelek.
오,
We are so grateful for your precious teachings in this auspicious bodhicitta ceremony. My question is related to reincarnation. If all beings keep reincarnating across all of the realms, why is it that the human population keeps multiplying? Since there's no way to know how many beings there are in the other realms at any point in time, it seems odd that the human population just keeps increasing. Can you please share your insights on this? Thank you.
다 들었는데 그 정신이 변은 둔주스 차샤네.
So, in relation to that, even the animals, regarding the animals, when the world first came into being, there were very few animals or microbes which developed into animals living in the water, and then from there, the rest of the through the evolutionary process, other animals also developed, and then we have apes, and from the apes, human beings. So things, even the animals have increased. So in the end, human beings also will not be there in this world. They will also disappear. So there are these eras of epidemics, diseases, and famine, and so forth. So even with regard to the plants, which are inanimate, they also started with seeds, and then they also increased in number. And so that's somehow, we could say, nature of how things evolve.
Thank you, Your Holiness. We would like to move on to the second question from Malaysia. He's in the organic fertilizer business. His name is Mr. Terence So.
Good morning. Delay. My question is related in verse 13 of three principal aspect of the path. It mentioned, furthermore, appearance reveals the extreme of existence. Emptiness reveals the extreme of non-existence. However, why there are others that assess appearance reveal the extreme of non-existence? Hope Holiness can guide us in our practice and wish His Holiness long life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. 단지 지당에네 그게
So generally, whatever we see, we say, oh, things are there. And so the appearance here does away with the nihilism. The extreme of nihilism is done away through the appearance. And then when you use Chittamatra philosophical view and do analysis into how things exist, what they come to is rejecting externality of things. And they say things are mere mind.
And
then the Savatantrika Madhyamaka say, of course, things do exist, the way they appear. But here in this text, the three principal aspects of the path, what this refers to is that things do appear to have some objective existence. If that's how things exist, then it should become clearer and clearer the more you delve into or search for the identity in things. But that's not the case. And therefore, appearance does away with this permanence, extreme of permanence. and emptiness does away with the extreme of nihilism. So, in other words, emptiness, the meaning of emptiness is dependent origination. So things, if they exist, if something exists, it should either be dependent, otherwise it should be independent. So though things do appear to us as if they have some objective existence from their own side, yet they don't exist apart from being merely designated. And therefore, appearance does away with permanence and emptiness, the extreme of nihilism.
Thank you. Now, next question.
Thank you, Your Holiness. We will move on to the next question from Singapore, Miss Fiza.
Good morning, Your Holiness. My question is, the self is merely imputed, designated on the basis of dependence on the parts. So there is a dependency on some degree of objectivity. So how can we reject this objectivity? Thank you.
That's true. So when you say things are merely designated, that they are nominal, so when you actually come to decide or come to the conclusion that things do not have any existence apart from being designated, and that they do not have any objective existence. So of course, you'll say, I do exist. And whereas in the non-Buddhist traditions, they assert a self which is independent from these psychophysical aggregates, whereas the Chittamatras point to an alaya vijnana, this foundational consciousness. Savatantrika Madhyamakas say that the sixth consciousness is the identity of a person. Yet those who reject any objectivity in things and self, these Madhyamakas say that a person cannot be posited from within the aggregates, the five aggregates. In the Ratnavali, Master Nagarjuna says that as long as there is grasping of aggregates, so long in view of these there is a grasping of I. So until you are able to make this conclusion that a person is merely designated on the basis of your aggregates, when there is this grasping at the aggregates, the Ratnavali, there is this grasping at an I. So with regard to this, I have a very clear experience. About 50 years ago, so when I thought about a person is merely designated on the aggregates, there was this experience, that there was this insight that, oh, I do not exist. So on the basis of this body and the mind, there is no body. And when I thought about the body and mind, I found that I did not exist. And there was a fear that grew in me. So though I had somehow found some understanding or insight into selflessness, but that understanding of selflessness was the understanding that this self does not exist as a self-sufficiently, substantially existent I. And then I thought along these lines from Ratnavali, As long as there is grasping of aggregates at aggregates, so long in view of these there is grasping of I. And so when I thought about these lines, it really helped me to see that I do exist, but not independently from these aggregates. So we do try to confirm or justify that the I exists. I exist the way it appears to our mind by saying that you hit yourself and say, look at this, I can touch myself. So apart when you actually take away your body, and within the body, you remove your head, hands, the arms, legs. Where is the body? The body is made up of all these components. And then on the basis of that, this body, having this kind of a shape or is called a human body. And then the animal's body is called animal body, and so forth. So when you see that the aggregates, the body and mind are merely designated, then you'll be able to see, confirm that the I designated on those aggregates also are mere name, merely designated. Next.
Thank you, Your Holiness. We will move on to the next questioner from Vietnam, Miss Troti Hong.
Good morning, Holiness. My question is how to help people in the East, or the older generation, like my father, my mother, who rely on strong faith instead of reasons, to generate a true sense of renunciation and bodhicitta. Thank you.
So amongst the practitioners of the Buddha Dharma, there are two types: those who follow on the basis of faith alone, and those who follow the teaching on the basis of reason. So when you actually understand the teaching of the Buddha well and then find faith in it, that is more or less the faith based on reason. Whereas if you say, oh, the Buddha is such a holy person, was a holy person, Nagarjuna and so forth were holy persons, therefore we must keep faith in them. And then growing faith in that way without much reason, those are the followers based on the people following the Dharma on the basis of faith alone. Such people did exist even during the time of the Buddha himself. So you may, of course, grow some faith in the Buddha and then the masters Nagarjuna and his disciples. But when you actually study their texts, the teachings, you may be able to turn this mere faith-based blind faith into a reason-based faith. So that you need to put effort and familiarize yourself with the teaching, the reasonings. And so from both the sides, the method side as well as wisdom side, you will be able to make progress. So the blind faith, some kind of a blind faith, is like the foundation for us. So the older generation of the Asians, so amongst Tibetans also, those elderly people who have no study of the Dharma, of course they have single-pointed faith. So it's going to be difficult to try to introduce about the true cessation and true path to them. But in order to leave imprint on their mind, and so that they may be able to meet with the Dharma in the future, And where there is the practice of that in families, where there is practice of Dharma. And so you may begin with this, the faith of those of the inferior or the dull faculty, but then you should not just stay there. You can make progress through study of the Dharma. So I usually tell people that we need to become 21st century Buddhists, and so which means to analyze and investigate into the teaching, which is important. So all of us are same. Regarding myself, since the time I became an Upasaka, I have said, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, and I take refuge in the Sangha. I took the Upasaka vows in front of the Jo Shakyamuni statue in the Jokang temple in Lhasa. So in the beginning, for beginners, of course, you may have this kind of faith which is not based on reason as such, but through your study, you may be able to understand what the true cessation is and what the true path is. And through that knowledge, you will be able to grow your faith in the Buddha and as the refuge, and then the masters Nagarjuna and so forth as the Dharma jewel. And then by keeping faith in the three jewels in this way, you'll be able to make progress in your study, understanding, and then make transformation within yourself. And so you need to follow, as I explained the other days, you need to go through the process of study, reflection, and meditation. So the faith and the devotion or trust that we have initially must be developed further, in other words, through the study and reflection and meditation.
Now next.
Thank you, Your Holiness. We will move on to Macau. Mr. Willis Tang, for your question.
Good morning, Your Holiness. My question is, the world is becoming unsustainable with global pollution and lack of clean water. Does pursuing a study on sustainability, industrial design help to contribute towards a better world? Thank you.
So the industries, of course, harm through our environment, through pollution. I have an example here. In Stockholm, in the middle of Stockholm, there is a river. One year, I have been to Switzerland several times, and one time when I was there, some of my friends told me that in the past, this river the fish could not live in this river at some point of time, and then when the industries went through some amendment or some changes in their structure and so forth, slowly in this river in Stockholm, fish came and increased. So gradually that happened. And so we could also, we should not just think of money and cause damage to our environment. Of course, we need industries for money. It's related with economy. But it's very important to not pollute the environment, and this is something we can do. It's possible. So, of course, doing your study, pursuing a study in this way would be, of course, beneficial for the world.
Thank you, Your Holiness. We'll move on to the last question for today. It's from Thailand, Chiang Mai, Venerable Prasattapon Papasara Jito.
Good morning, Your Holiness. My name is Papasara Jito Bhikkhu. My question is, when we have too much responsibilities and too much work going on in daily life, how can we find the peace of mind? Thank you so much.
다 가다지기 니리 소소지다 도고 전다에 에안지 팀민기
So whether it's for daily living or doing something for specialization in a certain field of knowledge. So of course, whatever you're doing without knowledge, it will hamper the progress of humanity. So rise up in the morning, early morning. So if your work, for example, starts 8 or 9 in the morning, so before going to work, use half an hour or 1 hour or so. So of course, we usually in our daily life use our sensory perceptions. So during this time that you spend half an hour or 1 hour, try to draw your mind away from this distraction to the external objects through the 5 senses, but place your mind on your mind itself. Focus on your mind itself and have the experience of a mere clarity and awareness, not following the external stimuli, and try to focus your mind single-pointedly there, and that is to do with shamatha, this calm or tranquil abiding. And when you have some experience of this clarity or luminosity and awareness of the mind, and this clarity and awareness nature increases, then you do vipassana meditation, analytical meditation. So this is how we go about with meditation on the mind. And in the Indian religious traditions, since about 3,000 years, these meditations of shamatha and vipassana have been there. And so the Buddha also made further progress or development in this tradition. So, of course, in the Buddhist countries, we do prayers and recitations. So if we could spend more time in meditation, it would be good. So regarding the Namgyal monastery, when we do deity yoga practices and come to the point of doing taking the death state into Dharmakaya, I have asked the monks to stay in meditation for a while rather than just continuing with the rest of this ritual. So it is important for us to do meditation. In the Pali tradition also, you have a very good system of the Vinaya practice. The There was a Thai monk who used to meditate a lot. Buddhadasa Bhikkhu, maybe, His Holiness is talking about. And there were other monks.
I mean, there are monks who can stay in meditation generally for 2 to 3 hours without distraction. So even within the meditation, it is important to do both the focusing meditation and the critical analytical meditation together.
Thank you, Your Holiness, for the 3 days teaching. We have enjoyed and learned and benefited from it. We hope the global situation improves and a suitable vaccine will be available soon so that we can visit you in India. And with this, on behalf of the organizing committee, we request Your Holiness to continue to teach us at Asia Teaching next year and many more years ahead. Please stay healthy and safe.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Your Holiness.
Singapore. Singapore. Oh.
Yes.
So you are from Singapore.
Next year,
Yes.
For the time being, this illness, so they cannot sort of go outside. Next year, perhaps a possibility visit Singapore. And then from
Thank
there,
you.
I already received some invitation, my friend from Taiwan. So first from here to Singapore, and then Taiwan.
Rejoice, Your Holiness.
Of course, if the Beijing, the People's Republic of China, as they allowed me to visit Taiwan, then I think Singapore, first Singapore, few days, then Taiwan.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Your friend in Singapore will be waiting for you. We hope you will visit Taiwan soon.
Thank you.
And come by Singapore.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you.